What's up guys, my name is Robin and I make stuff. Today we're painting a black-capped chickadee. Try and say that one 5 times fast. I can hardly say it 1 time normal speed. My 10-year-old private student actually asked me if we could paint a black-capped chickadee. I was like, a black hoobity, what? I am not a bird person. Even though today I'm telling you to stay cool, I normally am not a bird person, but these black-capped chickadees are so super cute. I'm excited to paint this. We're gonna use our spray bottle and try and accomplish some soft feather feel because these little birds have like poofy little bird chickadee butts. If you love this, if you love hanging out with me, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. Let's get painting. Today I'm going to be using my Hahnemühle watercolor sketchbook. I love this thing. You know, don't be afraid to get one of these and just start putting all of your favorite artwork in them and unfavorite artwork because it's really fun to see your progress. Nice clean page just for me. Oh yeah, oh yeah. I taped this sucker down because I love a nice clean border. When I take that tape off, it can make any mediocre painting feel magical. I actually fold this in right here so I don't rip the paper on the other side. This Hahnemühle sketchbook has a tendency to rip when I take the tape off. Here's the cute little bird that I found. I love this because, one, we don't have to worry about a background. We can do some really nice loose wet on wet or wet in wet, whatever you want to call it. And I like his little fuzzy fluffy butt. Very simple colors. I also chose this because you can see both feet. There were plenty of birds that I thought were super cute, but you couldn't really see their feet. And I thought for the sake of the painting, it'd be better if I could see both feet. We want to draw this chickadee. I'm going to do a light sketch on this paper using the photo as a reference, assuming that it's the same as my paper. It's not. The dimensions are totally different. Ultimately, we want to make sure that our chickadee kind of sits in this area here, and we have a branch here, and his tail doesn't go off the page, and his head doesn't go off the page. Okay, so if we're keeping that in mind, I'm going to say that, you know, maybe this branch comes over like this. Again, not trying to be perfect, just trying to get an idea. His chest, he's kind of like this teardrop, but his teardrop shape is like this, but he's bigger up here. So I draw pretty loosely, trying to figure out, okay, what actually looks right. He's got this chest here. This goes up like this. This comes out like that. Something like this. Gets pretty close down here. He's got one leg that comes out like this and then around. Maybe this comes down a little bit further, and his fluffy little butt comes up like that. Leg kind of goes at this angle, actually. Something like that. Okay. Never drawn a black-capped chickadee. This morning I told my wife that I was drawing or going to paint a black-capped chickadee, and she was like, what? Yeah, we're not bird people. That's his little beak, and I have some lines on there because he has this coloring that comes around like that. Oh boy, if you're a bird person, please still follow my channel, even though I might be really messing up this bird. No, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. Tell myself it's gonna be fine. Okay, just trying to get a guide on here of, there's this right here, and then he's got this wing that comes back like that. Actually, this kind of goes more that way. I'm really talking you through it. Hope you appreciate that. We're gonna come down like this, and guys, that looks pretty bussin', as my teenager would say. Oh man. All right, look at that, guys. A little chickadee, close enough. That's all we're trying to get to, is close enough. I do have a spray bottle. These are great because they keep your paper wet. There's wet on wet, and then there's wet on wet keeping it wet, and that makes things kind of soft. I don't use it a lot, so this could be a total disaster. Plus this paper is a little different in how it reacts compared to Arch's paper or the Arch paper. Now, because this guy has some light colors to him, I'm gonna just kind of softly dab my eraser on here so that, number one, I can still see where my guides are, but I don't want it to be so dark that it stays once I start painting this. So trying to keep that in mind. Just need a little bit of guide here. Like this whole thing right here, I don't need that pencil line in there. I normally say don't erase. However, I find that people erase more the whole entire thing, and that's not what we're trying to do. I just want to erase some of my guidelines so that they don't get cemented in there. Ultimately, you could easily print this picture out, rub charcoal on the back, put it on your paper, trace the little bird. That would accomplish the same thing, so you're not like, my bird looks like it's a zombie bird. So take the guesswork out, print that picture out, charcoal on the back, put it on your paper, trace it with a pencil, boom, bang, done. Start by wetting the paper. We'll do the background first. Sometimes I find that's a good place to start. I'm gonna make this a little bit messy in my background, but pretty exact around my bird because I want this background to really define the shape of him. So being a little careful about where I'm putting this water. Remember, wherever you put water is where that paint is going to flow. So if you don't want paint going on your beak, don't put water on the beak, you guys. It's pretty simple. Painting around the back of my little chickadee and around this tail just a little bit. Like I said, we're going to do some kind of messy work in here. Now, his butt is the fluffy part, like around his butt and his chest. I'm going to just put some water in here and we will kind of figure it out. I'm actually going to paint over his legs because his legs are a little bit darker and I think that I can put dark over whatever color I put in here. I might actually do the same for this tree branch. I was like, what the heck is that called? It's a tree branch. A duh. All right, lots of water right there. We don't want that. Scooping it away. And there's a lot of water sitting right there. All right, this is just my little practice notebook. You can already see it's kind of ripply. You know, there's that green gray color that's in there. That's fine. We can do that. Yellow ochre, maybe some ultramarine blue. It's going to be kind of a muddy, yucky green. Ultramarine blue tends to kind of be that way. I'm going to put some cadmium yellow in there. Let's get some of, I don't know what this color is. I can't remember, but we're going to put some of that in there and that's going to help take it to more of a green hue, I should say. If I could remember what that color is, I would tell you. Maybe cobalt teal or something like that. All right, dropping some color in. Again, kind of going around the outside, around the outside, around the outside of my bird. Dropping and plopping paint in. This should be fast. We're not, notice, I'm not going like this. Boring. No, we're not. We are plopping it in there. We want it to look kind of random and crazy. You could do some splatters, just kind of create some fun, fun movement in there. Around the beak. That's where I'm being a little more particular. But when you're putting wet on wet, it should be fast. I love doing wet on wet. Now, maybe I'll take some of that out. And I just swiped it with my finger. A little more splatter right there. Banging the paintbrush on my finger. Do that because it works better. And then over here and around his body, around the branch. Now, I did put water there because I don't necessarily care if it bleeds into that. It will help me create less of a weird gap of white if that were to happen. And so that's why I did that. But notice I'm not like just painting over it. I don't need to do that. Maybe I'll get some more of that cobalt teal, whatever that color is, and just kind of plop it in. You can notice there's some really cool granulation separation happening in some of these areas, which is cool. I'll do a little bit of ultramarine blue splatters. Oh yeah, I love that. And I'm doing it still into it while it's wet. That's going to soften itself up. Boom, 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 chicka boom. Pay attention. I am not painting or messing with that. And the reason why is I want the water to do the work for me. If I go in here and start messing with a bunch of it, That's going to change how this spreads out. Before this dries, I want this to be soft. So this is where we're going to start putting a little bit of definition in here, and in terms of the coloring that we see, to maybe let that soften up just a little bit. It's kind of a yellow ochre-ish color, so I'm going to get just a little bit of that, and we'll kind of put that in here while we have this wet area. And let's actually spray. That spray bottle really threw off my groove, honestly, because it came out very strange. Oh, that's not a very good spray bottle. It needs to be misty. Well, forget that idea. What you want to have happen, I'm going to lift some of this out right here because I don't want that to be so wet. It's very wet on wet. So what I'm going to do instead, clean my brush, dry it off. When I come in here where this water is, kind of scoop some of that up back into itself, dry my brush off, pull that back into itself. So my paper's still wet, but it's not sopping wet. Pull that back into itself, pull that a little bit. And so now I have this missing color. That's this Haunamule paper. I'm just going to put some of this green back in here that I have on my palette just while this is all still really wet. Okay. And now just let this dry. I'm pulling some of that paint back into itself. We're going to let that dry. Now what we're going to do is start coming in and putting some of the grays in here that we see. The way that I do that is ultramarine blue. This should be no surprise unless you're new. Welcome to the channel of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna, my two favorite colors. They're not my favorite, but I do use them quite a bit. They make a nice gray. His chest, right along that front side, is pretty gray, so we're just going to kind of put some color in there. And if you're thinking, holy, that is a lot of gray. No, it's not, because watch what's going to happen. I'm going to clean my brush out, dry it off a little bit, come back in here, kind of soften that up, pull it around. Wow, what happened to all the grays? Not a lot of gray anymore. Pulling some of that in here very lightly, just some suggestion of maybe some, literally almost said leaves, of some feathers. He's got feathers. Suggesting what that looks like. And so now he's got a little bit of gray underneath there, which is great. We could probably go even darker. And I might, while it's wet, just put a little tiny bit. And notice I'm just tapping it in there. Because it's wet, it will kind of hopefully soften itself up into that just a little bit. And a few little suggestions of more feathers in there. We want them to be kind of loose. That's what I prefer anyways. And then maybe I'll put some gray down in here for his little legs and his feet. I really can't see what his feet are doing. Can you? Let's make it bigger. Oh, he's got some issues. Let's make it smaller. Okay, we're gonna just suggest something in here, whatever. And another foot over here. Notice that his feet in this picture are a lot darker. That's okay, because I typically work light to dark, especially with watercolor. You want to build your darks in gradually. Just putting a little bit over here on his butt. And he's got this underneath piece there. His tail's got some white here. We can totally leave some of that white. Let's put a little bit of that same gray. I'm getting that same gray color under here. And maybe up in there. We'll leave that like that for now. I'm going to clean this off and just kind of pull a few little pieces of what I just painted. He needs a little tiny suggestion of a line. Got some grays in here. Beautiful. So I'm just going to kind of go for it. Down to here and up in here. You can always leave some white, kind of like what I'm doing if you really want to. Or you could clean my brush off, dry it off just a little bit, and come in here and kind of pull that gray through so it lightens up a little bit. And he's got that white section right there. So paying attention to that, and he's going to go all the way like this. And this is going to be darker, so it's great that we kind of fill it in. Now, because that's white and kind of soft, I think what I'll do is just kind of pull this back like that. Just trying to soften up that area a little bit so we don't have any real harsh lines in there. Okay, so that looks great. We've got a little bit more of that yellow ochre-y color. I'm just going to put a little bit in here. You're like, oh my gosh, that's not a little bit. That's a lot of it. No, it's not. It is not. Clean my brush off. Dry it off a little bit. Pull this color back into itself. Lift it out. Pull this color back into itself. Lift it out. Look at that. See, guys, just follow along. Yellow ochre color right on his little butt area there. It's very subtle, and you're probably thinking that is not subtle. Yes, it is. Clean your brush out. Dry it off. I see a lot of people clean their brush and go straight here with a bunch of water on their brush. You don't want to do that. We want to clean it off, dry it off, make room on our brush to pick up paint. And I'm going to come back this way, kind of pulling it back. All right, that's pretty good. I like it. Don't overwork it. Talking to myself, don't overwork it. We're going to put in some of those darks. This is coming right along. So the darkest we're going to get is ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. Now this might be that student grade Cotman watercolor. I had a student ask me the other day, I can only get like a really dark gray. It's kind of like this. It's not super, super dark, rich, pigmented black like you can get with Daniel Smith and some of those other more expensive paints. Yes, that's true. However, for the price point, if you're just starting out, Cotman watercolor is an excellent price point. You're going to be using a lot of paint and being very cautious about what you're spending money on when you're just starting out. And so having something that doesn't feel like such a huge commitment can be kind of a big deal. All right, I'm just kind of coming around the head here. He's got a little bit of, something back in there, but I want this to kind of go around here. I want to pay attention to where his eye is, which is somewhere down in here. And we'll go around that with black. Yeah, his eye is pretty black. But we can fill this in for now and then come back with maybe a smaller brush or something and really finalize that black in there so that we at least know where the eyeball is. Now, I feel like there's a little bit of softness in here, so I'm just going to clean my brush off, dry it off, and kind of pull that just a little bit back into itself so it kind of softens up that edge tiny, tiny bit. Notice that I am wiping my brush off almost every time that I pick that paint up. Need a little bit more water here, so clean my brush off, dry it off, and I'm putting water right underneath that, but also picking up a little bit of that paint. So it feels a little softer. You can tell it feels just a tiny bit softer in there. This also feels a little soft. Perfect. That's fantastic. Now he's got this underneath side also pretty dark. Well, the top of his beak actually is pretty black too, so let's do that also. Turning my brush on its side to have as thin of a line as I possibly can, kind of like that. It's got a little bit that comes down in there. Got this piece of black coming down like this. I'm just going to kind of fill this all in. You can see that it's pretty gray, this color, and it's just going to dry lighter. You can always come and do another round. Now, it's kind of like feathery. These are feathers. So I'm going to do the same thing I did over here, outside, and pull it back in. So that way the water is touching the outside, and then I'm pulling it back in, giving that paint just a little bit of room. You can see it's really filling that in. I'm not sure that I want that much, just a little bit. I also don't love that harsh line right there. Let's look at his beak. Oh, look at how cute. We can actually put some other feathers in there. So he's got this like little piece right here, but see all those little wispy feathers? Those are so adorable. And it's dark under there, so maybe we do a little dark piece under his beak and then a few little wisps. Let's try it. Okay, so he's got a dark piece under his beak like this and like that. Now he's got all those white little feathers coming in right there, so clean my brush off, dry it off. Let's put a little bit of water right on the outside of there, soften up that just a little. I don't know, something like that. This is my first time painting this little chickadee, so go easy on me. So I have a little bit of paint on this, and I'm just going to kind of, with the very, very, very tip of my brush, just wisp. I think this actually goes down a little bit further. I'm going to lift some of that color out. I don't really like the shape of how this is going. This Hana paper is really easy to lift color out of, which is nice. So yeah, maybe something a little more like that. Actually doesn't look too bad with that lifted color. I think his eyeball also is kind of throwing me off, but that's okay. We knew that was going to happen. I'm going to fill this in with a little tiny bit of gray. It's not super white in there. That looks pretty good. Now we have this dark underneath his wing. We're going to let that dry and come in and do some of these dark suggestions in here. Those can be kind of loose, mixing some more of that dark gray black as close as I can get to it. I really prefer teaching my students how to mix the color. Yeah, you can go buy a tube of black and take all the guesswork out of it. What if you don't have black and you have all these other colors? How do you make that black? Well, just mix your primary colors together. That'll go a long way. Under here like this, it's got a little bit of a bump thing there, and then a few little lines. Leaving some of those unpainted, I think will lend themselves to say, yeah, you know, there's some feathers in here, and I think that's working pretty well. Something like that. He's going to be a little more gray, darker gray in here, and we'll just kind of do some lines, leaving some spots unpainted. And so I want to create this edge in here, clean my brush off, dry it off, soften this up just a little bit, so that way it feels like that white, fluffy, fuzzy, feathery stuff. Lift some of that out. That is one of the nice things about this Hana Mule paper, is you can lift a lot of it out. It doesn't stick into the fibers of the paper too much. He's got this dark piece under here, so we'll put that in there. He's got a dark under there, a line like that, and then underneath, something like that. His legs. So back here, just kind of putting the leg idea in there. Feet. We're just going for the suggestion. This foot right here, really dark. This looks pretty scary. Okay, and maybe it's a little bit more gray underneath. I'm just gonna do some little swoops. It's more blue than gray, and I'm good with that. Just some very loose little lines kind of lend itself to say, hey, it's kind of shadowed under there, and I love that for us. Don't you? Yes, you do. Just say yes. All right, that's looking pretty good. I do feel like underneath there needs to be a little darker. Yeah, that looks good. Love that. This looks funny. We're gonna fix that. So for the branch, let's do some brown as like a base coat. So I'll put in some burnt sienna. There's also some other colors kind of mixed in here. I don't mind. I'm not trying to go straight out of the tube, burnt sienna. Get some more water, and we'll just kind of come in here like this. Around that, and around this one. While that's wet, we can drop in some darker blues, maybe underneath like this, so that it's like there's some shadow. That will soften up a lot. And then once that's dried, you know, I might actually fill those little white spots in just with the paint that's on there. So I'm gonna clean my brush off, dry it off a lot, and just kind of do something like that, where it doesn't feel so starkly white. Once that dries, we can come in with a little more texture or solid colors. We can define his feet a little bit more. So let's let it dry. Let's do his eyeball. Now, let's take a big look at his eye. So it's basically, there's a highlight in the middle, top middle. We're looking at it, highlight here, but also a little gray right there. And it's got this gray outline. I think it would benefit us to do some sort of outline. So what I am going to do is I'm going to come in here and we'll do a dark black, blue, gray, whatever color this is that we're mixing with the burnt sienna, ultramarine blue. We're going to come into this very carefully kind of leaving a little bit of a space around the outside if I can. And if it's not perfect, that's okay. And then I also want to leave a little white dot in there like that. That looks pretty good. So I was very careful about leaving that white. Now you can always go in with like a white pen or something like that and do that, but why do that when we can just plan ahead for the white? I'm gonna go a little darker here, a little darker here. I also don't love that little gap. There's some sort of gap that I'm seeing there. Clean my brush off, dry it off, soften that up right there. Might actually soften all of that. A little harder to do that with the Arch paper. This Hahnemühle pad, a lot easier. I really like what's happening with this wing here. Might actually do one more darker kind of stroke in here. Just kind of suggesting that edge. Love it. Okay, his feet. I think we're ready to go back to those. Not going to guarantee that I'm going to love them, but they're going to be something. They're going to be something. Let's put a little dark in there. Kind of letting that first highlight of that toe, claw, the first claw show. I'm going to kind of do the same thing here. Come around the outside of that one. Don't want to outline it. I'm going to pull that paint so that it creates that hard edge there. And maybe something a little more like that. And this also pulling. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just trying to suggest that there's a foot there. And I think that it's working for the most part. It's all that we really need to do. I'm going to get some blue and put that on top of this branch. That's going to be a nice shadow right there. And here. He's also got some shadow in here. So really light blue. Probably think I've lost my mind. I haven't. Very light. So watered down. I can see right through it. That's important. And I'm going to just do a stroke like this. Maybe a little bit here. A little bit in, well, you know, he's got his little shadow belly. I think that's pretty good. Maybe just a little bit right there. I think that's about all there is to it. Let's take the tape off. Pull it away from your picture. Well, how do you think it turned out? Not so bad. I think I might be a Chickadee fan. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time that I make stuff.